Hey everybody, welcome to Tech Uploaded. I'm Chris, and it's build day again. All right, so here's what I'm doing this time. I've got a home theater PC set up in my family room. The only problem is I've got it in a computer case right now, and it doesn't look very good. It's sitting next to the television, next to my tower speakers, and I just decided I didn't like it. So I got enough parts collected over the last few months to actually redo this system. So what I did is I got a BitFenix Phenom case, and that measurement for that case is just the right size to actually fit within my entertainment center underneath my TV. So I'll be able to tuck everything in there and it'll sit nice and off to the side, and you won't be able to see it like you could with the big ugly NZXT black tower that I had sitting there. So that being said, what did I scrounge together for this build? Right, so given this is a home theater PC, it's going to be on all the time. So I actually ended up going with the Intel Xeon E3-1230 Haswell-based Xeon processor just because it uses such lower power consumption, yet it still gives me the horsepower to play games if I want to. And to cool that off, I've got this low profile, just kind of cheap heatsink cooler, but it's really quiet. It actually does a really good job, and I think it's like around $15. So then as far as where that chip is going to reside, it's going to sit inside this little MSI Micro ATX H81M P33 motherboard. And then to store all of my live TV recordings and other media and games and whatnot, I need lots of storage in this particular machine. So I've got a 64 gigabyte ADATA for the boot drive, and then a 2 terabyte Western Digital Green to store all of my recorded television. That's all that drive is used for. And then a 1 terabyte Western Digital Blue to hold my games, music, and other various things. Now, powering the graphics side of this is actually my old graphics card from my gaming PC that I used to use, and that is the XFX Ghost, and it's the R7850 from AMD, which is still a very, very good graphics processor if you're just looking to do, 1080p gaming with moderate to high settings. And then for the RAM, I've got 8 gigabytes of Ripjaw 1600 megahertz memory that, again, came from the existing home theater PC that I was using. And then finally, to power everything, I've got a Seasonic G-Series 450 watt semi-modular power supply. And I went with this so I could remove some of the cables because I know space is going to be tight inside that Phenom case. And then I also did something a little oddball. I went ahead and got an Intel NIC from 10100-1000 because I do have gigabit wired in this house and I wanted to get the best performance I could out of my network. And then finally, of course, the star of the show, the Phenom case from BitFenix, which is the ATX variety of this. You can also get it in ITX as well. So there's the breakdown of the build. It's going to be a Xeon-based home theater PC. What I'm going to do is put this together, and then once the system is assembled, I'm actually going to walk through setting the system up to be a home theater PC, setting up Windows Media Center in Windows 8.1, and then connecting it to my HDHomeRun Prime to show you how I actually stream live TV, and then how I use my Xbox as the media extender. So you're going to get a full tour of my Media Center PC setup. All right, before I get going too far into anything, I just wanted to show this is the BitFenix case before being disassembled to put everything in. It's got very clean lines, and it doesn't have anything that really draws attention to it, which is what I like because it's going to be going in a home theater PC setup or a home theater setup. And I don't want people to go, oh, there's the computer just sitting there off to the side. Well, that's how mine is now. So it's got this nice matte black finish to it all around the outside, so you're not going to get any fingerprints. And just like I said, there's really nothing about this case that makes it stand out at all, which is fine. That's what I wanted. So you've got, your side panels, your back. You can tell that it is for an MATX because you've got all these expansion slots. And then at the top, you do have your vent for cooling. And then taking off the side panels, you've got everything inside. So you've got all of the cables attached to the one side that are going to have to go into the motherboard for USB 3 and various hookups like your power and LED light and things like that. You've got one 120 millimeter fan mounted on the bottom, and then it looks like behind where the motherboard will mount, you've got all your tools, and then this case actually has an interesting setup on the power supply. Because you're mounting the PSU in the front, there's a little cable that runs across the bottom to the back for the power. It's pretty straightforward stuff. This is going to be a tight squeeze. All right, for the power supply, what I did was went ahead and figured out all the different things I was going to need on the module power supply, plugged them in, and then mounted it to this little slide here that goes in. And then what I got to do is feed it in over on this side, and then line it up, and I'll turn it around for you. there's just a little screw hole that I just have to put this into after I mount it to that, and you're good to go. Okay, with the power supply in the case, it's time to move on to the motherboard and the goods. So you've got, usual driver disk, your guide. Let's see what we get as far as cables. You get 2 of the SATA cables, so good thing I saved some from the other build, 'cause I'll need 3. Then you get the back plate and the little motherboard. All right, what I like to do is go ahead and use the box as a bench. So set it on there. Then I got to get my CPU. So I got my Xeon. I'm going to take that out of the box. All right, there it is, Xeon E3. All right, then just grab the chip. Open this up. Make sure you line everything up. Again, that arrow is always going to point in the lower left, and there'll be a little indication. So just make sure that everything is lined up. Check your pins real quick, too. Okay, everything's good. Make sure you didn't get a dud motherboard. Then lower the latch, and then as you close it, that little protective thing pops off. You actually don't have to remove that yourself. So that's it. CPU's in, easy peasy. All right, then I'm gonna go ahead and put on my CPU cooler. So I need to grab that. And then a little bit of my thermal paste. And just put a little thin line. Down the center. Everything's good. Everything's nice and tight. I have to check the back of the board too, just to make sure that it got a snug fit. Then run the CPU fan cable. And last but not least, pop in the memory. All right, the motherboard is assembled. Everything looks good. Now the tricky part. Got to get this thing into the case. All right, so the motherboard's installed, and I actually have this fan and this fan hooked up to the motherboard headers. Now there's only 2, and because this is a home theater PC, I don't want this to be too loud. I do have the option of hooking up an additional fan directly to the power supply through one of the modular connections, but I don't really want to do that. So, and the reason for that being is it's going to run at full blast if I do that. I'd have to get a fan controller of some kind if I wanted to slow it down a little bit. So, that being said, I'm going to try it with 2. If it gets too hot, then I'll add a 3rd one, but I'm not too worried considering this is just a Xeon. Okay, let's talk hard drives in this bad boy. This is where you've really got to start paying some attention. That bracket that I removed at the beginning, well, now's the time to populate it. So as you can see, I've got both of the physical drives mounted on here using this weird rubber system. So essentially what it is they give you these little rubber pieces, and then you've got to stick the screw through them on the drive itself, but barely tighten it so that there's still a gap in the rubber, and then you got to line it up and slide it in. You'll see that the hole's bigger, and then it gets smaller. You got to slide it in and then screw it down. Then for the SSD, that goes in. It sits in a couple of these little grooves right here, and then screws in on the other side. So that was nice. But what you have to be careful about is the SSD cannot have its ports facing on this side because you won't be able to plug anything in. As a matter of fact, it's still going to be a really tight squeeze to get the SATA power connector in there. I'm going to be bending it a lot more than I'm comfortable with, but there is no other option here, so that's what I'm going to have to do. All right, before we put the hard drives in, the last thing you need to do is do final checks on all your cables. So I've got all 3 of the SATA cables that I need. And I've got the power to the motherboard. I've got all the fan headers connected. So do your last check, because once you block off this area, getting down there is going to be difficult. So now, with all that out of the way, I have 2 things I need to install. All right, so first things first, I've got to get this behemoth of a graphics card in the system. So I basically have got to clear a path here for this thing to run in. And then make sure my latch is open. Line everything up, and set her in, and it fits. And then finally, stick my little teeny tiny network card in there too. So then you take this little piece and you feed it back through. All right, there you go. That's in there. Okay, now I need to make sure that I run power to the graphics card. Right, now I'm going to try to do at least something for cable management here. These look like they'll tuck up nicely like this. All right, what I've been doing now is just doing a little bit of cable management as much as I can. So I've tied this off and just kind of kept all the cables together there. I've kind of tied the power supply cables together so they kind of stay off to the side next to the graphics card, out of everybody's way. And then that's pretty much it. I think I'm ready to do the drives. All right, so that is screwed in. Now what I need to do is plug in my cables. And unfortunately, because of how the SSD had to be situated in this case, I need to run another power connector over here because I don't have enough length left on those. All right, so that is finally everything in the case. So not the best cable management job in the world, but I did what I could. So you can see up here, I've got all the SATA kind of tied together. I've got things kind of running out of the way. I'm making sure nothing is blocking the fan for the graphics card. You can see the network adapters right there. You can see, again, cable management. I've got the SSD and then the other hard drives behind it. I've got the two SATAs running. They're tied together. I've got the power for the graphics card tied together, which I need to snip that still. And then everything from the power supply is back here. I have a couple cables snaked back to the SSD. Okay, so I've got everything hooked up. The front panel connectors are there. Then I ran the little converter for USB 3 to USB 2 so I could hook USB 2 up since this doesn't have USB 3 side panel support just on the back. And one thing about this motherboard that was really kind of uncool is the manual that they included was just this thing, and it's useless. It's just universal for all their motherboards. So I actually had to go online and download the manual and get the PDF and then print off the directions because you have to plug everything into JFP1. Other than that, I've got my front panel audio, which I'm never going to use, so I'm going to put a cable tie on that and get it out of the way. There we go. I wanted to tie those down so that they don't get in the way of the fan for the graphics card because this is one of the rare occasions where the fan on the GPU is actually facing upwards, so things can happen to it. Lock that into place. And I've got my handy dandy tray that I like to use. Done. And heavy. Okay, there's the first boot. So it says CPU or memory changed, please enter setup. So press F1. Here's the important stuff up here. Xeon E3-1230 at 3.3. That is correct. Memory size, 8 gigs. That's correct. 1600 megahertz. Correct. All right, SATA port 1, A data. Correct. SATA port 2, Western Digital. Correct. SATA port 3, Western Digital. That is also correct. All right, so now it's time to do the boring part, and that is install Windows. Now, if all you were interested in is seeing how to build the system, that is done. Everything is working, so you can tune out now. However, if you're interested in seeing how to set up Windows 8 Media Center Edition, because it's a little different, you have to download some stuff and pay, which is kind of crappy. But if you're interested in seeing that and how to get it set up using HDHomeRun Prime for live TV and recording live TV and then setting up your Xbox 360 as a media extender so you can kind of have a whole house DVR kind of thing, then I'm going to walk through that now so you can get the whole Media Center PC experience. Okay, so Windows 8 is installed. I went ahead and installed all the chipset drivers that I downloaded off of the website, the MSI website, and put the Catalyst driver on there for the 7850. And now it's time to start updating Windows because you have to get to a certain point in Windows Update before the Windows 8.1 upgrade will kick in. So in Windows 8 Standard, there's no start menu down here at all. You just get the thing that takes you into the corner. So to get to the Windows Update, the quickest way to get there is to go to Computer Properties, and then in the lower left-hand corner, it'll say Windows Update. So you want to click on that, and you're set to automatically update, and it says Important Updates are available. So there they all are. So what I want to do now is click Install. Okay, it's been about an hour. I just have to laugh. It just amazes me how long it takes these updates to run. And anyway, now you can see, looks like Windows is pretty pumped at this point. I mean, it's right there. It's huge. I think it's telling me something. I think we're ready. Okay, so finally, Windows 8.1 is installed. So the next step is to put Media Center on here. Now, I've already purchased it, so I just need to download it so I can use my key. So you're going to hit Windows S for search, and then you're going to type in Add Features. And it'll say Add Features to Windows 8.1. Then I already have a product key. So now here is where I'll enter in my product key. Okay, once you put in your product key, it'll say this product key is accepted. Then you have to accept the license terms. And the funny thing is it actually doesn't tell you what you're adding. You just know from your key. And then you click Add Features. Now this takes a while. Adding features, this might take a while depending on your PC and whether it needs any updates. That's where it gets you. It's that caveat, because it always needs updates. Okay, if you made it this far, we're in the home stretch here. The last step, setting up Windows Media Center. So first things first, I have an HDHomeRun Prime. That is a LAN-based cable card tuner. So what I need to do is install the software, which I downloaded from Silicon Dust's website. So go through the installation for that. All right, now it's going to check everything and make sure everything's good. Said it found 3 tuners. There's all 3 tuners. Everything's good to go. So once you do that, you can close it, and you want to open Windows Media Center. Okay, continue. Custom. Okay, here you go. So I want to configure tuners, TV signal, and guide. All right, here's the key. You need this Microsoft Play Ready. Now, this Play Ready will come and bite you in the ass if you're not careful. If you change hardware in your computer, I've had this do it when I've changed out a processor before, so I would hope changing a graphics card wouldn't do it, but I really don't know. If you break this Play Ready, basically this is a DRM, you're screwed. You won't be able to use your Media Center anymore. You'll have to reinstall Windows. So you want to let it do this first. Now, more than likely, before I actually set up the tuner, I'm going to have to install a piece of software called the Digital Cable Advisor. All right, Windows Media Center detected this tuner. So yes, there you go, Digital Cable Advisor. Okay. Yes, I agree. All right, now you got to do this test. This test takes a while, actually. Okay, 4 minutes later, the test is done. Now you have to update your system settings. Click yes again. All right, do you want to set up Windows Media Center to use a cable card? Yes, I do. If you haven't activated your cable card yet, you'll have to do that. That can be a process. I'm assuming that you've already done that and you're just upgrading or something like that. If you haven't, there's a whole other process you got to go through that involves calling the cable company, and it's a whole thing. So Avon Bright House Networks, Hendricks County. That's me. All right, you have 3 tuners. All right, so now it's updating that evil Play Ready. And then here it's going to download the TV program guide. And finally, TV signal setup has finished. All right, so once you get done with all of that, you can go into your guide and you can see that it's already populated. The problem is you have every single station possible, and my HD channels don't start until 1000. So the next thing you want to do, well, first you want to make sure everything's actually working. The time is completely wrong. And this time, you're at the correct time, 10:22. All right, so let's just make sure everything's working.
He took one look at it, pried open his cage, flew right into the ceiling fan.
All right, so that's good. So I want to stop. Now, the next step is you want to go through and go into Settings, TV, Guide, Edit Channels, and then here's where you want to do this. So what I do is I clear all, and then I jump down to 1000, and then I just start checking off the ones that I want. Okay, here's a little trick I like to do with Media Center. After you set it for 1080p, it puts a hidden overscan in. So what that means is, if you look here in these corners, you see that this doesn't go all the way to the edge. There's this empty space here. It's really prevalent where there's a little shading. So what I like to do is close Media Center, and then I look this up every time. This is a little guide on how to edit your registry. So I go to this address. You can just Google search this. Just search Windows Media Center disable overscan, and this is like the top result. So you need to edit the margin area. So margin left, you just go in, and where it says value 33, you're just going to put a 0 there. And top, same thing, 0. Right, 0. Bottom, 0. And then margin saved. You want to change that to 1. So now you've changed the left, top, right, bottom, and you're telling it to save, and then use default overscan margins. You'll need to find that, double click on that, and you want to change that to 0. So now you can go back into Windows Media Center again. And you'll notice that everything is in the edge now. Much, much better. So there you go. So the last step is hooking this up to the Xbox 360, making that the extender. And that's really easy to do. All right, now I have my Xbox set up so that it automatically goes into Windows Media Center. And that's exactly what it's going to attempt to do. All right, so it's trying to go into Media Center. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to actually cancel that. And then I'm going to go into Settings, System. And then what I want to do is go down to Computers. And then where it says Windows Media Center, I'm going to click on that. And then I'm going to do Setup. All right, so here's where this happens now. It says for security, we will need you to enter the following code. So it gives you a code to put in. All right, so grab the Harmony remote and back out of this. And then you're going to go to Settings again, and what you want to do is go to Add Extender. So click on that, click Next, and then this is where you enter in your code. All right, so you put in your code, then you hit Next, and there you go. So now you have Windows Media Center on the Xbox. And you can see it gives you all of the same options that you have on the other one. This camera does not want to stay focused. So you can do all of the same stuff. So anything that you record on the home theater PC is going to show up on here. Well, all right, there you have it. The entire process of setting up a home theater PC. From selecting the parts to putting everything together in that small little case, to installing Windows 8, upgrading to Windows 8.1, installing Windows 8 Media Center, getting the cable card set up for live TV, and then activating an Xbox 360 as the Media Center extender. Everything encompassed here. So if you're still watching, congratulations. That was a long ride. And if you found this video helpful, please go ahead and click on that subscribe button. And also, check me out on Twitter. I have a Twitter account, Tech Uploaded. I'm usually posting some kind of random thing there. Usually the ideas floating around in my head for what I might do next. And that being said, thanks for watching, and be sure to check back soon.